The meaning of the title of the song, it's from Gaza to Baghdad, and
Yes.
from what is the meaning of that? Or is there a story behind? Or
I think this meaning is many of us who not only grew up in Palestine, but in
Mhm.
the region
Yeah,
in general, no? The Levant and around, we all have this melancholy of a world that we haven't lived yet, not even our
mhm.
parents, but the generation of our grandparents and their parents as well. And it's this melancholy of a world that we all hope that it comes back again, a borderless
Yeah.
world that is free from like colonial, imperial, and Zionist
Mhm.
tyranny. At a place where like the whole region is open again with all its diversity of different languages and different cultures and different religions and whatsoever. And then this Western domination is
Mhm.
also history at like finally. I think this is where the idea of the song came from before the album, because one of the song titles, as you probably have heard, is called like that. And then
Yeah.
I decided to call the whole album this with this title because I think it somehow sums up the feeling of all the album. And all what's happening now is to somehow look to a brighter future. But this kind of like funding that is coming from like Western colonial imperial
Mhm.
structure, it's a big thing, not only in Palestine, but in many regions around the
Yes,
world,
yes.
especially those, actually only those who have lived under colonialism for multiple decades, sometimes even longer, no? And I believe this is the new form of colonialism from the same powers that back then were there with force,
Mhm.
like stealing land and exploiting people, no? And nowadays it is more hidden behind a different kind of facade, no? Of
Oh,
hey,
there's Annette.
depending, no?
That you have also
Like
good.
like I was just saying, many like countries that have lived colonialism, no? They are dependent on such structures, no? Of actually the money that was stolen from them at some point to be given back to them, but only not really given back to them. No, you will get like a small fraction of it only if you speak the narrative of the colonizer. No, and this is what Palestine is unfortunately built on. Now, the whole, not everything, but like a very big part of the like cultural sector, the what do you call it, the health sector and the educational sector. No, and I think this is the new form or one of the new forms of colonialism that if you speak the narrative of the colonial powers, you will get enough money to somehow survive, float on top. And if you try to detach and have your own narrative, you can sink deep down, no? And I think this is very dangerous. And I think this is what also is putting the Palestinian society in so much harm. And this is also what is like hindering the Palestinian people of true liberation, no? And I think like there are many initiatives in Palestine and other places around the world that where people are doing their own structures of organizing themselves and what so on, then I think this is what we have to focus on, no? To somehow find, of course, sometimes it is not possible to do projects without funding,
Mhm.
and to look for people who are genuinely wanting to fund such places to genuinely help without altering the narratives and the way of speaking of the people. And some other like ways is like crowdfunding, which we started now, and it's going quite well. I think until now we have covered about a third
Okay.
of the amount of money that I had to spend for the album. Let's see like how it's gonna go in the next coming time.
And where are you now at the moment?
I'm now in Berlin. I generally
Oh,
spend winters in Palestine, but I came to Europe because I have a couple of concerts. I had like in Ireland and here and in Paris, and then I'm going also to Cairo before I go to Palestine. But in 2 weeks, I'll be back in Palestine.
do you have a certain where which venues are canceling you? Is there a definition of that or not?
Basically, it is more this kind of cancellation that I've actually lived now. Was more from the Ministry of Culture in Germany, where they put me on the blacklist, no? Which means like no more funding from in Germany from institutions or anything that is funded by the government, no? And I suppose also anything that is any venues or festivals that are funded by the government will not be welcoming me, I suppose. There was some stuff happening, for example, the first tour of the last album we were booking. It was, I don't know, 2 months before when we just started selling tickets. I think the guys were a little bit. So 2 months before the gig that was happening in a city called Münster. I even forgot which venue it was. But at some point he was like, "Oh, we're not selling so many tickets," as I said, 2 months before. And then after that, the guy was like, "And also, you know what? We're afraid of that the event is gonna be a political event, and we're gonna be in trouble. And so, yeah, maybe we should postpone the concert." And then I tried to contact them a couple of months after for another gig in the season after. I contacted them like 6, 7 months, and they're like, "Oh, we're fully booked, no?" I don't know, like this seemed a little bit, it was not like, "Hey, we're not gonna book you because," but this kind of like way of dealing with stuff, different other artists as well. But I think the most clear thing was this blacklisting situation that my manager actually got to know about through this institution that we applied for funding for tour. And they told her clearly that they got a phone call or they were contacted by the Ministry of Culture and they told her not to give me any, not to give me the funds, no, or like the.
Is it the same with artists too? All kinds of sort of artists, or only in the music business?
No, everything, not only artists. I think it's also like, for example, there was this one big thing that happened in Berlin in a cultural center that they got like quite a big funding from the states. I think they applied like from the municipality of Berlin, and they got like over 3 years a whole institution funded. No, they got physical space plus money to get like artists from the MENA region, and it was also like they consider themselves as like a post-colonial queer migrant uh, institution called Uyun. And I think they had this one event where they invited a Jewish institution, anti-Zionist Jewish institution, no, like I think the Jewish Voice of Peace or something. And after inviting them and having some sort of specific topics, I forgot about it. The municipality here rejected the whole funding and they kicked them out, no, for example. It happens in many different. And hey, and they also invited an anti-Zionist Jewish Jewish institution, no? So it's also like this is also what pissed them off apparently. Or Lorena still tried to apply for one or two fundings from Germany to see if the situation has changed, if it was not, I don't know, if anything, just to try. Nothing was going through. And as I said, like even like a year ago, even a bit more than a year ago, that she got a phone call from the institution saying that, "Hey, we're sorry, this is not our decision, but the decision from the Ministry of Culture in Germany that I'm blacklisted." No, this is the vibe.
Within your political vision, your activism, reflected
Still
in
the
your
lyrics, huh?
songs?
Of course, this was a phase that was very predominantly affected by the political situation, of course, of like the world in general, but as a Palestinian, what's happening in Palestine. And so this was, I think, the most part of the input happening while writing the music, both text-wise and music-wise, but also like in different kinds of. I try to take in different kind of approaches, not to only have this feeling of helplessness and misery, but quite the opposite, to have it a little bit more optimistic, hopeful, and of course, and also angry and sad at the same time. But it very much influenced it for sure.
That's what I felt so strongly when we were, of course, at your performance here in Amsterdam.
Nice.
It was beautiful. And
Happy to hear so.
especially the lullaby I loved, which I recorded, of course.
It was, yeah,
That
yeah,
brings
yeah.
so much in the sorrow and in the grief, that
Yeah.
brings so much hope at the same time.
Indeed, indeed, indeed.
I think that really touched your heart, and then you can really feel the sorrow. I think that's very important for people who are more like outsiders. There are a lot of outsiders. They don't know what is going on in the head of the Palestinians.
For sure, for sure. And this, I think music is then a tool to somehow try
Yes,
to transmit these feelings in a way that gets it a bit more livable and feel like feelable by or felt by other people, no?
very beautiful project, the Palestinian music space. This February, there also is released an album or some songs from the artists. Can you tell me more about how it's going with the Palestinian music space and
Yeah.
about the artists?
The Palestine music space I started maybe 3 years ago, a bit more now, and it started like with an idea, especially back then when I was still a teenager, and I had this dream of having a room with all these instruments where I can just hang out with friends and just go rock star dream, no? I started developing the idea, and the whole thing came to life 3 years ago, and it started very small, no? And I was like alone, there was no one in the team. And I was trying to catch all these young musicians who want to live this kind of experience of playing in a band and writing music and so on. And now it has nourished much more. Now we're like, there's about 70 people coming on a weekly basis, daily basis, and like 10 bands rehearsing there constantly and all the time, and writing music, producing music. We're giving workshops in songwriting and arrangement and production. Like 2 jam sessions a week. It's happening a lot. And you can see also how people are, those young musicians are really developing, and how it's also affecting partially affecting also the music scene in Ramallah. And I hope we can at some point also take it outside of Ramallah, because Ramallah is also a very privileged place in the West Bank. And I think there are many other places that are also very much in need of such projects. So maybe at some point we could try to reach out to other places and get the idea a bit more wider than in one space only.
Yeah, I really hope so. Because I feel like we said before, music fuels the good side of of the story. Um, and what are your plans further than a tour this year and promoting the album, promoting Palestine Music Space?
I think that's quite a lot to do, because like we are still like in the process of releasing the album, which still needs quite a lot of work. No, it's not the artistic part of it, of like taking artistic decisions and writing and arranging and producing, but more the logistical kind of part, organizational, no? So this takes a big time of what I'm doing this year. Also, we're planning touring with the album. I don't think I'm gonna record this year another album, but maybe let's see. We're trying to do now this kind of like a summer course, like a summer camp kind of thing in Palestine,
Oh,
where
Nice.
we not only invite just like the students of the Palestine music space, but also connect them with other young musicians from all around historic Palestine, those who live in the north of Palestine, officially seen as Israel, but Palestinians, with like Israeli IDs. Other people from the other parts of the West Bank, to connect also musicians together, and to also get like music professionals and bands from within Palestine to give the workshops, and from outside of Palestine, and to make it like an annual thing, and by the end of it to have like a festival where those people who are leading the workshops, those musicians, can play like a headliner slot, and the bands who were with them, they can open or play smaller shows before them on the festival, no? And of course this needs a lot of also money. We're gonna see how we're gonna do it.
going to tour for the new album.
It will start in April.
Yeah, in May you will be in the Netherlands, I think, in
Oh,
Utrecht.
wow. Of course,
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
going,
yeah, yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Exactly. In May I'm gonna be in Utrecht. Be so nice. I would love to come to Amsterdam again. And there's a nice community. Let's see if it's gonna happen like by the end of summer or something like that. Could be amazing.
For the Dutch public, what are your first needs? What do you like people to do? Yeah, of course, order your new
Yeah.
album.
I think anyways, my whole very big part of why I'm writing music is like to somehow try within my own way to make a change, no? And to hope that people will get inspired to also, like actively start. We all dream of a brighter future, but it's nice to also work for a brighter future, no? So perfect.
Yeah.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Amazing. It was so
Yeah.
nice to see you, and I
You have
hope.
you have a message for the Dutchies.
No, I would give them a message when I'm in Tivoli.
Yes, perfect.
That's okay.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Well,
Amazing.
have a
Thanks a lot.
wonderful day and good luck with your health.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And you also have a nice, probably great day.